Hello and welcome to CTN. To learn more about the show, please visit ciotalknetwork.com. And the topic for today is extracting strategic value from Gen AI. So, Gen AI is on everybody's top of mind. We are all trying to see how we can create the most value and accelerate what we are trying to do, or create something which we had in other ways. We had issues creating. It took far more time, far more complexity was there. So with that said, what is it that an organization should do to figure out if they can get strategic value from Gen AI? Well, they have to look at the specific use cases. They have to look at what all areas it could create risks. It has to get its culture and its people and its processes all aligned. And then they have to start the journey. And given that Gen AI is actually also morphing in the same, at a very, I would say, a very fast pace, we have to make sure that the companies keep up. At the same time, they don't chase the shiny toy, instead focus on what their business is requiring. With all that said, we would like to understand what our organization is doing. And for that, we have Sally Miller, who is the DHL Supply Chain Global Chief Information Officer. Hey, Sally, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. So let's talk about the journey that has started with DHL Supply Chain, the group that you are leading. What is the journey looking like right now?
Well, obviously, you mentioned in your introduction kind of chasing a bright, shiny object or bright, shiny toy. And Gen AI certainly made a huge splash in the market on its introduction. So I think every technologist looked to see if there is applicability in their business. So that is how we started, and we treated it like any other new technology that we're incubating. We educated ourselves and we looked at potential use cases. That is how we started.
Now, when you did start this journey, and I'm sure, we are all in it today, nobody has completed or even far from completing or even understanding or comprehending the vastness of Gen AI could bring. What is your approach? What is that mantra? What is that core directive that you have from your management to say, yes, we see Gen AI, we have even used it personally so we know it has powers, some powers that we may not have even tested yet. What is it that they are asking for you to do? How far can you go with it? Are you allowed to go all the way? Or it's a controlled, healthy, skeptic experimentation?
Well, the first thing that we had to do was to get our arms around the environment where we wanted associates to use the technology. This is one of the first times where we've had a technology that was readily accessible to everyone upon launch. So we had concerns over data privacy as well as protecting our IP. So the first thing we did was created a secure environment for our associates to use. We didn't lock out direct access to ChatGPT. We do have a warning message, but the first thing we had to do was to control the environment because we knew everyone was using it. And if you block access from your network, they're just going to use it at home. So that was the first thing we had to do, was to put the guardrails up on everyday usage. And then at the same time, it was very exciting to us, the potential to automate a lot of, back office tasks. And we quickly conducted some workshops and came up with a bunch of use cases that we thought had significant ROI. Normally, in a contract logistics business like the one we're in with fairly low margins, we're not on the bleeding edge of adopting technology. But we somewhat jumped in on Gen AI because of the ROI on the use cases and just the improved quality that we could produce and documents and other communications had considerable upside.
So when you are looking at the very foundation of what GenAI is built on, right? And you try to match it with the methodologies and the frameworks you might have utilized to evaluate other emerging technologies as they came over the years. Are you tweaking your measures because this is so disruptive, unlike any other that you saw in the past, to see what to do with it and what would be the best way to assess the strategic value so that you can plan accordingly?
We are using our existing processes to evaluate new technology. About 5 years ago, when we launched what we called our Accelerated Digitalization Program, we developed a funnel approach to assessing technology from research through proof of concept and then to product and scaled phase. So we did the same thing with Gen AI use cases. After we educated our business partners, we then collected the use cases, as I mentioned earlier, and determined if they were Gen AI use cases. We did find a couple things. One is a lot of them were better suited for machine learning. Another was we didn't have good quality data to support some of the use cases. And with Gen AI, it is more critical than any of the other technologies that you train the model with good data. So we had to prioritize which use cases we would work on based on the quality of the data that we had and the ROI. And as you mentioned, Gen AI has such great potential, and the ROI on the use cases are almost weeks and months as opposed to years with some of the robotics solutions. So it's very exciting. And because of that, our executive team really went all in on investing and training up resources to leverage Gen AI.
Now, when you talk about ROI, let's look at this fundamental question. Is it the hard ROI that you're looking at, or even soft ROI today, which could translate into some hard ROI tomorrow?
We started out that we wanted to almost have a soft ROI, so not reducing staff because we could do things with much fewer people and we could assign those resources to other things. And that is the mode that we are still in because we're in proof of concept and slow rollout of probably 4 or 5 different use cases. And we will assess whether we can, in future use cases, have a different approach. But we are a services business and we value people and we're still not fully staffed. So the ability to use Gen AI to maybe grow in the coming years without growing our overheads at the same rate is very attractive to us. And I think that's achievable.
With this idea of ROI, how do you relate, or rather compare customer experience, customer satisfaction, which is, in a way, is today used as a very strong measure of whether we will make money today, if we will increase the lifetime value of a customer, whether we will make money tomorrow. Do you use such metric and connect not direct to dollars and cents, but a direct impact, a measurable impact using Gen AI on these areas, and then justify that, yes, this is a use case where if I invest, I'm going to get some measurable impact on customer experience, and thus it's worth it, and let's go for it?
Right now, all of our use cases are back office type use cases, several in our legal area and IT to map data from one system to another, and also to kind of cleanse data and improve data quality are the use cases we are actioning now. In terms of customer facing applicability of GenAI, we have a tracking tool called My Supply Chain. It has other features as well, but we plan to incorporate GenAI into that application. So, long answer, but we're early days to where something is customer facing. We are expecting the supply chain IT applications that we deploy to soon incorporate GenAI into its functionality. We haven't seen that yet, but I know it's coming.
Now, with supply chain, we know anything which you could predict is going to help you tremendously. So now that said, GenAI can fundamentally disrupt the way you could carry out predictive analytics and do other things. So be able to almost prevent a problem before solving it. While it's impossible to always do it, but at least you can give it a good shot given GenAI's capabilities. Are you investing in that area, or do you think there is a value to looking at GenAI as a way to predictively create avenues for growth and predictably prevent issues before they happen?
We are taking a multi-pronged approach. A lot of what we're leveraging today to predict the future is with machine learning. We find that we're able to utilize that very successfully. In Gen AI, I think more of the applicability is around generating text, data, code to help our associates be more productive. And we're not yet using Gen AI to predict what will happen. We're more using machine learning and supply chain.
In your world, while there are a lot of physical moving parts, but there is also a lot of information floating around, there is a lot of compliance, I'm sure, at places and workflows. So most organizations have attempted to use GenAI for content generation, content analysis, and other form of massaging of content. Are there any use cases that you feel in your industry or in your company that could be taken to the next level of productivity or efficiency or effectiveness using GenAI in this area?
Yes, we respond to a lot of requests for information from our customers, and we're a global company. So a lot of people will put the regional spin on the response, and depending on where they're getting the source of some of their information, it might not be the latest information, or it might not include some of our latest examples. So we are in the process of improving our content hub, which will house key data and marketing messages that we want our customers to receive, so that when we respond to requests for information, the quality of what we're generating improves significantly and improves the image that we have to our customers.
One area for GenAI is also looking at performance indicators or KPIs, which would directly hit the bottom line. Then there is another where you look at the revenue potential. As you've started this journey, and yes, you mentioned that you're looking at more at the back office, but do you have eye on the ball to say, you know what, we can only squeeze the penny so much in terms of getting only so much efficiency out of already a very streamlined supply chain, given that your organization has been around for decades? Is the eye on the ball to kind of see what disruptive business models, revenue streams, etc., could come out of it? Is the R&D cell at work right now on that front?
Yes, I think that's more of a longer term vision, but we've had a lot of learnings with what we've learned so far with Gen AI. First, you have to decide what you're going to purchase as a commercially available solution. Then you also have the option to develop applications using Gen AI with a partner or yourself. So the amount of time it takes to upskill current staff or hire or work with a partner takes some months. So I think we are earlier in the journey and will develop, revenue generating use cases as we see success with what we've started so far.
With the underpinning of GenAI in your organization, would you say, are there any risks that you found were inherent to this venture, if you will? And if yes, in what way you made some calculated moves so that you keep risk under control at the time when you are doing more POCs, etc. And then what's your risk management approach or strategy so that when you are looking at going full blown, the risk doesn't come and haunt you?
There are inherent risks to Gen AI, and a lot of that can be controlled with how you train the model. And that gets back to my previous comments about good data quality. Also, having the change management process and process in place for all of the output to be reviewed, I think is also critical. So there are risks, but I do feel that they can be controlled and aren't slowing down our rollout of Gen AI solutions. But I think that there are other factors at play that are different than other technologies. How you architect the solution, how you purchase the solution and scale it are different than a typical application that runs on a server. So these impact how you design the prompts and how you design the overall application, which is new to any IT shop. So there is learnings on that front, upskilling and ensuring the organization isn't deploying solutions that haven't gone through a vetting process. That's the last, but probably most important point. We quickly put in place the edict that nothing could be put into production without a full vetting of the solution. Because the last thing you want is inaccurate data, you know, output of, the work of your team members.
And in fact, interestingly, you mentioned data because one of the things that we as media are hearing from the very get-go, say back in November 2022, is when Gen AI concept was introduced to the world, and whosoever was getting excited, some other data leaders or other leaders were slapping their hand to say, get your data in order before you can make, or rather exploit Gen AI to the fullest. What have you done as you even started dabbling in it and as you may be potentially looking to scale it to make sure your data house is in order?
We will not advance any use case to even starting a proof of concept unless we've done a thorough review that the data quality, which we can measure, is good enough to leverage the technology. That is the most difficult thing. And just what you said a couple of years ago, get your data house in order, could not be any truer than you will slow your organization down if you don't have good data for the use case. And it's almost more important than any other technology we've rolled out. So that is key to advancing a use case. And we have turned down use cases that had a good ROI, but the quality of our data was not yet there to be successful.
And do you think this is something which we have to take a step back, think properly? And of course, we should all think properly, but the agility that the business demands in other areas. And here GenAI comes and says, okay, we can make you even faster, do things faster, better, cheaper. Are you able to somehow use the agile concepts at business level, agile concepts at implementation level, so that you get the most value timely from whatever GenAI has to offer?
There are a couple different options. One, you can slow down to go faster. So you slow down, fix your data, and then progress. Or you take a subset of the data that you know is of good quality. It could be an individual location, a country, a region, whatever, and prove the ROI while at the same time you're fixing the data from the other locations. So there are a lot of creative things you can do to keep things going and advance, but you have to have the focus on good data quality.
Now, how are your people taking this? Where they, of course, that's not a new fear of job displacement, but even keeping that aside, this is a brand new animal, right? And not everyone is enamored by it. Some people are skeptical, and you've got business users, and you've got technology users, and you've got executive leaders who are non-technology, and then you've got technology leaders like yourself. Is there one sentiment that you're able to, work on so that it prevails as a DNA of your organization, so that GenAI is looked at in the right light, not foolishly optimistic, not unnecessarily skeptic?
I think that there is a saying out in the industry that Gen AI won't replace your job, but someone who uses Gen AI will. And I think a lot of people recognize that, but yet there is a subset that feels it's overhyped, or another subset that is hesitant to use the technology because they don't completely understand it. And it's an education process that we have to go through. But over time, you will need to be able to use Gen AI to be as efficient as a peer in your role who uses it effectively in their everyday role. So there will need to be some adjustments by some. But I would say overall, the sentiment is positive, and people are excited.
So that said, now it all comes down to leadership too. And when we are looking at strategic value, and that does some hard, some soft numbers, and you got to work with your management, you are also working with executive leaders, business counterparts, you name it, right? And even partners, given supply chain is so dependent on partners. What is that leadership style, that mindset, that communication, that agenda that you share, so you eventually have a village which adopts GenAI for strategic value that is generated for all parties involved? What would you say would be your message and or tips for folks at your level who are trying to drive this GenAI driven transformation?
Well, you obviously have to have the support from the top. So the CEO needs to be educated, try it themselves, understand it. And I think that going through that education process and explaining the different use cases and potential ROI and the need to invest, I think becomes very clear. And that was our experience.
Great. So lovely having you again, Sally. Thanks again for taking the time to sharing with us the strategic value that DHL Supply Chain is trying to derive from Gen AI, and wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed talking with you today.
And listeners, please follow us on social media, subscribe to our channel and then follow on our podcast. Once again, thank you for watching and listening to us on CTN. This is Sanjog Gaul, your host. Till next week, take care and God bless.